This, according to Fox News, President Trump is expected to swiftly declassify a controversial memo on purported surveillance abuses. That's what sources are telling Fox News and other places. Even as Democrats raise objections that edits were made to the document since it was approved for release by a key committee. Those objections fueled a new round of partisan recriminations on Thursday, with House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi firing off a letter to Speaker Paul Ryan demanding the chairman of that committee be removed. That's Chairman Devin Nunes. He's calling him dishonest, yada, 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 but the objections don't appear to be halting the publication plans. They expect the memo to be released Friday morning. Apparently, it exposes abuses within the FBI and the intelligence community when looking into the Trump campaign 2 years ago. So Memogate continues on. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason. I'm not going to talk too much about Memogate because, frankly, we don't know what's in the memo yet. As I've been saying before, I don't know I haven't seen the memo. It could be ground-shattering, worse than Watergate, the biggest scandal to ever hit the world, or it could be a big nothing burger.
Another big scandal, bigger than Watergate, huh? We get those about every 6 months. It
seems like it. It's actually kind of getting annoying. It's kind of getting old with all these scandals. So we'll see. But I mean, I haven't read the memo. I don't know. Some Republicans out there are saying, it's the worst thing ever. The Democrats, of course, are saying it's all lies. And most likely the truth is somewhere in the middle.
There's a lot of people who probably don't even know what Watergate was all about. All they know is that a president resigned over it, and that's their big hope.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the problem with all of this is the rhetoric has just gotten crazy on both sides. So you have the Republican side and Devin Nunes, who I was reading the transcript of the committee meeting where they were talking about declassifying his memo. Nunes said that the FBI is under investigation and the intelligence community is under investigation. Well, I mean, no, the whole FBI is not under investigation. Certain members of the FBI are under investigation. But you have some people on the right basically saying we can't trust the FBI. We can't trust certain other parts in the intelligence community. And then you have the left saying they're totally trustworthy, no political bias at all lies by Republicans. And probably the truth is somewhere in the middle. Probably when it comes to the investigation into Trump and into Hillary Clinton, there were individuals involved that their political bias got in the way, because political bias gets in the way of everything in today's world. And that's probably where the truth is. And those people need to be dealt with, and we need to make sure it doesn't happen again. But we don't need to call out the whole entire institution. But that's kind of what's happening. And, of course, the Democrats, they don't want to make the FBI look bad at all, or this investigation look bad at all, because it could make the Mueller investigation look bad. And we know the Democrats think the Mueller investigation is the next Watergate. So everybody thinks there's a next Watergate going on. So there you go. That's pretty much all my comments on the memo. We'll comment more if they release it. They say it could be released tomorrow. Who knows? By the way, I didn't introduce you, Mr. Tom Benson. Mr. Tom Benson is back on the show tonight, and he is producing tonight. And how are you, Tom?
I'm doing fine. I do not consider myself a sports fanatic at all, but this is a very exciting time of the year. You have the Super Bowl this weekend.
Yes.
You have the Olympics coming up.
Yes.
And the baseball pitchers and catchers report in 20 days.
Huh?
Holy moly, it's...
I don't even know what the third thing was you were talking about.
Well, that's
shows
it.
How much I know about baseball.
They report. The players start reporting for spring training.
Oh, for spring training.
In 20 days, yeah.
Gotcha. You're probably more of a baseball fan than the other things, right?
Yeah, baseball is my sport, yeah.
Yeah, you're like...
Because I'm lousy at everything else.
You're one of those Yankee fans, aren't you?
Yes. Yeah.
No. All right. I'll still let you be the producer, I guess.
Home run derby coming up this season.
All right. So, Tom Benson, you were not here during the State of the Union. You had family plans, but did you get a chance to at least watch it?
No, I did not. I relied on excerpts, highlights.
Okay, so you did just after the fact, basically.
Yes, basically. And the interesting thing when you watch it after the fact is most of the reporting I saw was on the reaction of the Democrats or non-reaction of the Democrats.
Well, it was so obvious during the speech.
And they just look so bad. I mean, they have a PR problem there.
Here's the thing with the State of the Union. I'm not the only one who's really said this, but this is my personal take on it, watching it. And it kind of hit me the next morning, really. Mm-hmm. But the most amazing thing about it is it was pretty uncontroversial. There wasn't really much controversy in the speech. We expect there to be controversy in everything now because it's Trump.
Sure.
He knows how to stir up controversy.
Yeah.
But really, most of the speech was good. You know, I talked to my dad, who after he watched it, and he's not super into politics. Like, I hope he doesn't mind I'm talking about him right now. But he's not super into politics, but he keeps up with it from time to time. Uh-huh. He's a casual observer. Mm-hmm. And he told me, you know, he asked me what I thought about it, obviously. And then he said, you know, from just watching it, I thought it was very positive. I thought a lot of it was very uplifting. I thought, you know, he did a good job of trying to make you feel good about being an American and try to make the country feel good about where it is right now. And I think the everyday American who watched it, most of them, I think that's how they felt.
Yeah.
I think if they're honest with themselves and they don't let the Trump hatred cloud their vision.
The biggest surprise I had was the morning after. CBS poll said 75% thought it was a good speech.
Yeah.
And I think the word they used the most was that the speech made them feel uplifted.
Yeah. I mean, there was stories in the speech that he wove in the speech, did a really good job of that I think for the most part was pretty uplifting. If you're the average American and you don't have this hatred for Trump and you don't want to disagree with every one of his policy proposals, you just look at the speech generally as a regular American, you're going to think it was a pretty good speech. And that's why I think you're right that it makes the Democrats look bad. Because there was so much of the speech that the Democrats sat on their hands the whole time. There were things that there was really no reason for them to sit on their hands, that even they would agree with most of the time. But because it's President Trump, it's so awful.
How could you not
have to sit down?
How can you not applaud for the kid who put the flags on the cemetery plots out in California? I mean, they sat on their hands for that.
Did they really? I don't even remember that. They sat on their hands talking about veterans, and it's just really interesting when you think about the everyday American versus these political biased people. Now, the media is the same way. I actually have some audio here, if you have it ready, from ABC News. Their reaction from their different pundits right after the speech, it's amazing how it's like, did you watch the same speech that I did? And I'm not one who thinks that Trump is perfect all the time. But just from a casual observation, it was a pretty good speech. But this is how a lot of them reacted.
One thing's pretty clear, John. He did not unify that chamber tonight.
George, I've never seen anything like it. Right now, the Democrats have basically run for the exits.
And, George, you have to think about those dozens of dreamers in the audience tonight. What they are thinking as they hear the president talk about this, as they see the divisions there on the floor, concerned that they could face deportation come the beginning of March. And what the dreamers were thinking when they heard the president say that line that will likely be one of the most memorable lines of his speeches when he said, Americans are dreamers too.
Also, again, sort of stoking, I think many would say, racial tensions by bringing up this issue of kneeling during the national anthem.
Well, what I was thinking as I was listening to the speech is if the president met with me after the speech, I would say to him, well, that was how not to give a unifying speech. So let's go back and give the unifying speech. As everybody has mentioned, he mentioned Obamacare, the ending of Obamacare, divisive. Mentioned the tax cuts, divisive. Mentioned the whole rift on immigration, divisive, in the national anthem, divisive.
Wait a minute.
Calling this a healing speech is almost like going on a diet by drinking a Diet Coke and eating a pizza. That's as much of a healing speech this was.
What's decisive about the tax cuts?
Because it's a policy they disagree with. No. Now, the biggest problem with that comment was every president does that. Every president at the State of the Union, they talk about some of their positive policies that they put in place that have a positive effect. Of course, there's going to be some of that in the State of the Union. What did you want him to say? What did you want him to say out there? I love America. Good night, everybody. Of course he's going to have some of that. To say, oh, that was so divisive, Obamacare. And like, really? It's just...
It wasn't a unifying speech in the sense that the Democrats just... It was like water off the back of their duck backs.
I guess. I don't know. And then in terms of immigration, I guess some of that is divisive, but I just don't understand why people are so upset at Trump over immigration. He is literally offering amnesty for over 1 million dreamers right now. More than Obama did. He's offering amnesty for over 1 million dreamers. Elizabeth Warren had tweeted out something about that, and I responded in the tweet. I said he's literally offering amnesty for 1 million dreamers. And you're all like, oh, they're so worried about deportation. There's nothing that Trump has said recently. I know he said stuff in the campaign, but recently there's no evidence that he's going to deport the dreamers. Nobody thinks he's actually going to deport the dreamers. But for the most part, I thought the speech was fine. And then there was CNN's Sally Cohen, who didn't like the part of the speech. This is what Sally tweeted. I am a patriot and I love my country, but the way people have been chanting USA lately, especially in response to nationalist hate-mongering, sends chills down my spine. Because there was part of the speech where Trump said something and they were chanting USA, USA afterwards. And that's just nationalist hate-mongering. Did you know that? Nationalist hate-mongering?
I just found that out.
Do you want to hear the part of the speech that she's talking about where they were chanting USA, USA, USA?
By the way, let me say that she's got problems in more than one way. But okay, let's move on.
I have the audio there. This is the part of the speech that got the applause and got some people chanting USA, 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 that she totally freaked out over. Let's see if this is nationalist hate-mongering. Here it is, Trump.
Atop the dome of this Capitol stands the Statue of Freedom. She stands tall and dignified among the monuments to our ancestors who fought and lived and died to protect her. Monuments to Washington and Jefferson and Lincoln and King. Memorials to the heroes of Yorktown and Saratoga. To young Americans who shed their blood on the shores of Normandy and the fields beyond, and others who went down in the waters of the Pacific and the skies all over Asia. And freedom stands tall over one more monument. This one, this Capitol, this living monument. This is the monument to the American people.
Oh, boy.
That was it. You heard him at the end chanting USA, USA. He was talking about the Capitol and American history and how America survived some horrible times so we could govern ourselves, and how the Capitol is an institution of democracy. What is so nationalist hate-mongering about that? There's nothing. And most people watching that would probably agree with Trump that that's a good thing to say. Very unifying thing. Now, some Democrats actually did stand up and clap for that. One Democrat left. He didn't like it.
He walked out.
He walked out.
From Illinois.
Gutierrez.
Yeah.
Not all the Democrats did, though. Some of the Democrats continued sitting on their hands. Some of the Democrats did, like, you could tell they looked around and they're like, can I stand up here? Okay, yeah, that was good, I guess, yeah. Oh, no, I'm not going to chant USA, no. But, I mean, come on. It's just the reaction is crazy. So there was even more Beyond Reason reaction, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit as well. I'll play my voice of reason of the day on this. We're going to go through it and take your calls as well. If you want to call in, 407-916-5400. You can also text to 23680. Standard message and data rates apply. You can also follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. A little bit later in the show, I have to talk about some stuff I did on Twitter today that got a ton of reaction. So we'll do that as well. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
If you miss any of the show, you can download the Beyond Reason podcast on iTunes. The voice of reason in a world that is beyond reason is back now.
Welcome back to the show. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of truth in a world that is full of fake news, basically. We talk faith, culture, and politics here on Beyond Reason Radio. If you ever miss any of the show and catch the podcast anywhere, the podcasts are available, including iHeartRadio. Just search Beyond Reason Radio on the iHeartRadio app. You can also follow me on Twitter at BeyondReasonR. So we've been talking about the response to the State of the Union. First, you have the Democrat response during the State of the Union, which I think made them look petty for the most part. I talked about in the last show, I hate the State of the Union anyway. I think the president should just send a letter and call it a day. It's just a stupid political show.
There was a time they did that.
Well, exactly. It was Woodrow Wilson who actually introduced this new trend. Mm-hmm. But it's just a political show. It's almost a campaign speech most of the time. Mm-hmm. And so I'm just like, whatever. And it just gets more divisive and more petty by the day. It doesn't even matter what the president says. You have half the crowd, yay, half the people, boo. It's just
some pundit made a negative comment that it was an infomercial. Well, basically, he's right. Every president gives an infomercial.
Yeah, basically it is. Exactly right. And to say that it's new with Trump, it's obviously not new with Trump. It's been happening for a while. That being said, the response to it is even more beyond reason. And I actually wanted to play my voice of reason of the day. Tucker Carlson, I thought, had a great monologue yesterday talking about this. And he was also talking about a tweet by Joy Reid from MSNBC, which I actually saw that night and responded to that night on Twitter and Facebook, where Joy Reid said this. She said, church, ... family, police, military, the national anthem, Trump trying to call on all the tropes of 1950s era nationalism. The goal of this speech appears to be to force the normalization of Trump on the terms of the bygone era his supporters are nostalgic for. So church, family, police, military, the national anthem are all part of a bygone era that we are nostalgic for.
Okay.
In one sense, she's right that there is a lot of this country that doesn't believe in those things.
That's missing those values, yes.
Which is unbelievable, which is why people like when Trump says those things. Trump hasn't always practiced all these things in his personal life. I get that. But the fact that he stands up for these things as president of our country, people like it because they feel like these values are constantly under attack. Exhibit A, Joy Reid.
That's right.
But not only that, there are still millions of people in this country and many, many communities in this country where those are not bygone values. Those are their values today. There are millions of people in this country today that still live by those values, still believe in those things. Many, many people, probably the majority of people in this country still believe in those things.
Can I hear an amen? Amen.
But so for Joy Reid to say it's just part of a bygone era, that's what makes... does the left actually expect to win elections by saying stuff like that? Saying it's just a bygone era? No, they can't. So Tucker Carlson actually kind of brings up this point and another point. So I wanted to play this, my voice of reason of the day, him talking about his response to the State of the Union. Here it is.
The striking thing about this speech was how normal it seemed, how ordinary it was. The president stuck to the script pretty much to the letter. The result was squarely in the center of American public opinion. You heard broad appeals to national unity, calls for strong borders, a robust military. You heard warm words for the country's bedrock institutions, from the family to our democratic process. Outside the faculty lounge, most Americans like these things. They agree with them. Donald Trump remains controversial as a person.
Okay, pause right there for me if you can. So that's basically what I said at the beginning of the show, is that what he said, pretty straight down the middle, not really controversial. In fact, most Americans probably agree with a lot of these values. And that the Democrats acting petty against it, it's not going to do well for them because most people probably liked most of the speech. He continues on here.
Bulk of his positions are not controversial, not very. Check the polling on that. And that may be the key thing to know about our current politics. It's mostly personal. If you read a Trump speech in a British accent, pretty much everybody would applaud. Not everybody, but most people. Well, maybe unfortunately for all of us, last night's State of the Union was not delivered in a British accent. Democrats did not applaud. In the modern Democratic Party, everything Donald Trump says is hate speech, even the things the left once agreed with. Yes, Trump has changed the Republican Party. A lot has been written about that. But not nearly as much as his administration has changed Democrats. If you just returned from a year abroad, prepare yourself. You will not recognize the new Democratic Party. Last night, Democratic members refused to stand or clap when Trump praised the national anthem, when he praised military veterans, when he pointed out new low black unemployment numbers. Some refused to stand for Steve Scalise, the Louisiana congressman who was nearly murdered last year by a Bernie Sanders supporter. So what is going on here? Well, obviously they're giving Trump the finger. Bad manners are now a form of resistance.
Okay, stop right there. So, I mean, he's exactly right. It has become deeply personal. And there are some things, I mean, there was parts where Trump said things that he was like, the Democrats should even agree on. And he even like looks at them and puts his hand out to him. He says, look, you should even like this. And they sat on their hands. They sat on their hands. But the majority of the American people probably, well, as the poll shows, they did think it was a pretty good speech. And Tucker's right, but he makes an even deeper point, and here it is.
But what if it's more than that? What if Democrats actually don't like those things anymore? What if praising our veterans or our flag really does enrage the modern left? Well, in a tweet during the speech, MSNBC host Joy Reid put it this way, quote,
okay, stop.
Church.
I just want to make the point that this is the tweet that I was just talking about before I started playing the audio. Okay, he goes on.
Church, family, police, military, the national anthem. Trump trying to call on all the tropes of 1950s-era nationalism. The goal of this speech appears to be to force the normalization of Trump on the terms of the bygone era. Now think about that for a minute. Church, family, police, military, and love of country are now merely, quote, tropes from a bygone era? Most Americans consider those things the pillars of our civilization.
Right,
if you don't agree
exactly.
with that, imagine a society without those things. What would it look like? How long could it last? Would you want to live there? Joy Reid would. So would many of her co-anchors over at MSNBC and her Harvard classmates, and apparently most of the Democratic caucus on Capitol Hill. Church, family, police, military, those words disgust them. This isn't a political resistance. It's not about Donald Trump. It's nihilism, the mindless impulse to tear down what you did not build. It's rage at your father, translated into political terms, a politics that elevates all that is ugly and decadent and seeks to undermine the decent and the beautiful and all that came before.
So, and I just think his points are well taken. I just don't know how the left expects to win elections when they attack Trump for keeping values of church, family, police, military, and the national anthem.
Well, one thing you can be sure of, come the midterm election campaign season, you're going to see a ton of TV commercials with the reaction of the Democrats included.
Yeah, I agree with that. That some people have been bringing that up, that's what the Republicans should do.
And the Republicans should do that because a lot of people do have a short memory.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I have no doubt that Republicans will do that. But it's just, I don't know. I think the average American watching the speech thought for the most part it was a good speech. Yes, he had policy proposals in there that people are going to disagree with. That happens at every State of the Union speech. That's the nature of politics. But he also talked about veterans. He also talked about pride in country, pride in the institutions, pride in the American people, and pride in the American economy. And those things people like. And most of it was, in most of him saying it, it wasn't I did this, I did that, like Obama always did. It was we, it was us.
He said we 129 times.
Yeah. And it was obvious that's what he was doing. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
This is Orlando's Smart Talk Radio. Beyond Reason Radio continues now.
Well, welcome back to the show, everyone. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee, the voice of reason, the voice of truth in a world that is Beyond Reason. We are on till 8 p.m. tonight right here on News Radio 102.5 WFLA. But if you miss any of the show, don't worry. You can catch the podcast anywhere that podcasts are available. Don't forget, you can also follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. Someone on the text line was asking me, who's Joy Reid? Good. I'm glad you don't know who that is. She's an MSNBC host, but she's got a big following.
Good news for Joy.
So I'm going to talk about something that it got a lot of attention on my Twitter today. This is why you should follow me on Twitter. So a couple of days ago, actually, when I did the show, I ended the show with something so beyond reason you can't make it up.
Mm-hmm.
And that story was that somebody was against yoga. You know, a lot of people practice yoga. And I talked about how I'm even on this dating app where every girl in Central Florida apparently does yoga. But that's all they talk about.
Well.
Yeah. But somebody said that practicing yoga is a form of white nationalism because they're stealing something from, another, India, Hindu religion. It's cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
All that nonsense. Okay. And I said, this is just ridiculous. I think some people, they borrowed some of the it's basically they borrowed some of the stretches from the ritual and they do it, whatever. Fine. Well, someone that I follow on Twitter a lot, he used to be on the Blaze, is now with the Daily Wire, really popular conservative guy. I think he's like a year older than me. Way smarter than I am. He said his name's Matt Walsh. And he tweeted this out on his Twitter today that got a ton of response. He says, it's kind of amazing to see all of the Christians who think nothing of going to a yoga class. There are many excellent ways to get in shape that do not involve participating in Hindu worship. And so I really thought this was going a little bit too far with this. And so my response to this, let's see here. Oh, it looks like he's got a piece on it that I haven't read. But basically someone responded to him. Where did it go? Let's see. I kind of want to say, okay, here it is. So someone responded to him and said, you'd be amazed that Paul told the Christians and Romans to stop worrying about meat offered to idols and just eat it anyways, and saying he had no idea. Another person said Matt responded and said, really absurd analogy. Yoga is more analogous to the ceremony where the meat is offered than it is to the meat itself. Then I responded, I don't really see this as a bad analogy at all. Most people doing yoga are just trying to help their muscles and joints through stretches. When Christians do the stretches, they know it doesn't get them closer to Brahman since they know he doesn't exist. That was Paul's point in 1 Corinthians. If you read 1 Corinthians chapter 8, this is Paul's point when talking about, he basically said, if you want to eat meat sacrificed to idols, go ahead and eat it. Because Christians, we know that it doesn't mean anything that they sacrificed it to idols. Why? Because those idols are false gods. They don't exist. So who cares? Just eat the meat. As long as your heart's in the right place, eat the meat. Who cares?
Mm-hmm.
That was Paul's point.
Mm-hmm.
That, people at the time, because that was common in Roman times, that they would want to eat meat, but some of the meat, when it was made, was sacrificed to idols. And some of the Christians are like, well, can I eat this? And Paul's like, who cares? Just eat it. The gods don't exist that they're sacrificing to, so it doesn't matter.
That's what they believe. That's not necessarily what you believe.
Right. So, and that was my response. And I basically said the same thing about yoga. When Christians do yoga in the United States, it's just stretch moves. That's all it is. And most of them are just doing it because it's good for your muscles. It's good for your joints. I've done yoga moves myself. I'm not big on it. I'm not very flexible, but
I'd love to see that.
But when you start working out, sometimes you want to do yoga moves to kind of stretch out the muscles. It's good for it. And I basically made the point that when Christians do it, they know that they're not doing it to get closer to the Hindu god Brahman. They're not doing it to worship the god. They're doing it to just stretch. And if the Christians are doing it to just stretch, there's really nothing wrong with it. And that was Paul's point in 1 Corinthians, and that's my point now. That if as Christians we start getting involved in all of this stuff, it It smells of legalism, basically, is what it is.
Yep.
And it's really about the intent, and it's about where your heart is.
Yep.
So I responded to that, and Matt never responded to me. It got 1,000. It's over 1,100 likes now, basically. Both of my responses now are over 1,100 likes on Twitter. So apparently a lot of people agreed with me on that. But, I just don't. I understand where Matt's coming from, okay? That yoga does originate from Hindu religion in India. It actually predates Hinduism because Hinduism came later. There were many different tribes in India and eventually unified into Hinduism. It's a whole other discussion. But Matt is constantly trying to defend the culture from attacks, especially Christian culture from attacks from the secular and pagan and non-Christian world. I get that. But I'm telling you, when most people do yoga, I'm a part of this workout program online. They have yoga stretches.
Yeah.
It's just, they don't talk about Brahman or Vishnu. They're just stretching.
The biggest thing on their mind is, how am I going to get out of this position and not hurt myself?
Exactly. So that was my only point on that. Now, my second point, and this is why I hate Twitter sometimes. It's just, and Facebook, frankly, because it annoys me. So one thing I said about this is my point I also said is when Christians do the stretches, the yoga stretches, they know it doesn't get them closer to Brahman since they know he doesn't exist. Well, some Hindus got really upset at me for saying that because they think I know nothing about Hinduism because the way I said that was completely ignorant. Now, for one, I have a religious studies degree from UCF. I took classes on Hinduism. I've read books on Hinduism. I understand what Hinduism is. So I had to clarify. I was trying to make a different point, but okay. I spelled Brahman wrong. It's spelled Brahman. I spelled it with an I. Sometimes it's spelled with an I because the caste system, the Brahmins in the caste system spell with an I, but I spelled it wrong. Oh, that means I'm ignorant because I was typing too fast and spelled it wrong. The other thing is I understand that, I said since they know he doesn't exist. I said the word he. Well, Brahman isn't a he, okay? Brahman is not a god like we think of a god. He's yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, I know this. I know. Brahman, basically what Hindus believe is that Brahman is the essence of everything in the universe. It is the universe. The underlying essence of everything in the universe is Brahman. That's what Hindus believe. They don't believe he is a personal god like Christians do. They believe he's the essence in the universe. But the same, and you don't get closer to Brahman because it's not like he's up in the sky and you can get closer to him. But what Hindus do when they do yoga practices is they want to they want to empty themselves so they can be one with the quote-unquote universe. And by being one with the universe, emptying yourself from the physical world, you become closer to the spiritual reality, which is Brahman. I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone out there. It's a mystical thing.
Yeah.
You're trying to get to the spiritual underpinnings. But because I didn't write a whole paragraph explaining that, because it wasn't really my point, I had people calling me idiots and all this stuff. I don't understand the Hindu religion, yada, yada, yada. No, I mean.
So did you backtrack and clarify all that?
Yeah, I did.
To a certain degree?
To a certain degree. I made the point that, yes, I understand it's not a he like the Christian God sense. I understand that you don't technically get closer to Brahman. It's a practice to get one with the universe, so to speak. But then the guy, responding to me was pointing out that, Brahman is just the observable universe. He just exists because the universe exists. And then I pointed out, well, that's not technically true. There are some people that practice Hindu religion, some Hindu sects that basically believe that not only does Brahman exist in the physical world, but he exists in the spiritual world, and the underlying spiritual self that is eternal, that is beyond the physical world, and that part of Hindu religion is becoming one with Brahman in the spiritual sense because Brahman is eternal and that makes you eternal, which is... So I gets into a whole religious debate, but my point on all of this, I probably confused half the audience, and I apologize. But my point on this is, one, I hate Twitter. I hate it because everyone nitpicks every damn thing you say.
Yeah.
So you say one little thing different or you spell one little thing wrong, it gets totally picked apart and whatever. But the main point I was trying to make is that when Christians, most of them, practice yoga now, I'm not saying there aren't some places that you go practice yoga and they tell you about meditation and they tell you it gets you closer to God. And that, I would say, okay, Christians, you should stay away from that. That's not good. But most gyms, YMCAs, workout practices you go to, when you do a yoga class, it's just stretches. It's just workout moves. That's all it is. It's just a type of workout move. And then a guy said, well, then that's not yoga. That's not real yoga. And I said, fine, then we'll call it something else. Will that make everyone happy? That'll make Matt happy if we call it something else. And that'll make the Hindus happy if we call it something else, because it's technically not real yoga. And I'm like, you're getting into semantics there.
Yeah.
The point is, Americans, when they say they practice yoga in this country, it's really just a series of workout stretches. I really don't think God cares if we do, downward dog. That's a stretch move, and other stretch moves to loosen our joints and loosen our muscles. I really don't think God cares. All right. 407. I hope I didn't confuse the audience on that. 407-916-5400. Text to 23680. Let me take a call here real quick from Paula in Lake Mary. Paula, how are you today?
I'm good, Michael. How are you doing today?
I'm okay. I had to get all that off my chest. I hope I didn't confuse everyone, but it was just really bothering me. Go ahead.
Well, it's good to know that things bother you too, and I don't think you confuse anybody. I get confused sometimes at all the attacks. It seems like we used to differ on policies, we as a nation. Now we just differ on emotional things, and I've seen more and more of the Democrat Party attacking people for things. The yoga thing, you shouldn't do it unless you understand where it came from. As a white person, this and that. It just seems like there's so many emotional attacks. The flag, the military, the whole spiel at the State of the Union. And I have to wonder, when elections come up, the people who hate Donald Trump, and there's a lot of people who do, and they jump on the hate Trump no matter what train, I wonder how many of them secretly are going, but I'm feeling more and more like I need to defend our right to stand. I believe in standing up for the Pledge of Allegiance and the national anthem. I believe in our military. I believe in our law enforcement. There's people who might hate the man, but the left, the Democrats, the louder ones, are making everything that's near and dear that this country, that the reason people risk their lives to try to get to this country is what Donald Trump was talking about the other night. The fact that you have to vilify everybody and everything just because you hate the man, I think is a dangerous place to go. But it also shows why he got elected, or a big reason, I think, why he got elected, because Democrats and the left don't understand how many people still believe in church, in God, in family.
That's so true. I think they live in their, I was thinking this after I read Joy Reid's tweet, actually, is I think they live in New York or L.A. or D.C. or, these metropolitan areas where everyone else thinks like them, and they just can't believe that there's people in the other parts of the country that actually don't think like that actually still believe in those American values. And, in fact, there's millions of people all over the country like that.
I'm willing to bet there's a lot of people in the East and, the coastal country, or the coastal part of the country, who may tend out loud to agree, but in their hearts, I just think it's going to be reflected in elections, because what people say, again, I go to, why is it every single issue makes people, the average American person, feel like they need to defend themselves against being white, against being Christian, against, supporting a strong military and borders and security. And I just think there's more people that may jump on the hate Trump bandwagon, but they won't vote that way because they're seeing differences in the economy and things that matter.
All right.
It's all.
Paula, I appreciate your call. I got to take a break. Thank you so much. We're really late for our break. This is Beyond Reason Radio. I'm your host, Michael Yaffee. We'll be right back.
It would be beyond reason not to listen to Yaffee on your TuneIn Radio app. Download the app today and search Beyond Reason Radio. The conscience in your ear telling you the difference between right and wrong. Yaffee is back on the air.
All right, enough religious talk. I find it all very fascinating, but there's just no time for it. I just had to get that off my chest. It was really, really bothering me today. What really bothered me about it is I just get sick of the nitpicking on social media.
Yeah.
Where you can't say anything without someone breaking this one little word apart and twisting what you actually meant and throwing it over here and they can't just have a conversation with you. It's all just ridicule. It's immediately name calling and ridiculing. And it just drives me. It just drives me. How do we learn that way? How do we grow that way? Okay, so I want to get into another little story here that I found interesting. This is from CNBC. I had a lot more to get to today that we just had no time to, because I got on my stupid yoga rant, and I guess it really doesn't matter. Said this. It's from CNBC. Economy to grow at 5.4% rate.
I saw that.
In the first quarter. That's according to the Atlanta Fed tracker. If that is true, and it would mostly be because of the tax cuts, I think. Well, not just that. If that's true, the Democrats are going to go insane. The Democrats are going to be completely out of their mind insane over that. Because they all told Trump that was impossible.
Anything 3 and higher is really considered to be good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, last year's growth was still under 3%. Mm-hmm. They had a couple quarters that were above 3%, which was good. There's no doubt that the economy is growing. And what the Democrats have had to go to now is they're saying, well, Trump is just piggybacking off Obama, is what they're saying. You know, it was already great, and then it just got better, and Trump is just piggybacking off of that. But if you look at a lot of the economic indicators, they got a lot better when Trump got into office. Yes, it was getting a little bit better under Obama, but does that mean as well that you could credit the Republican Congress? Because a lot of things got better when the Republican Congress took over under Obama. So you could say that is why it's better. But there's no doubt in my mind that a lot of this is because Trump is a pro-business president. Businesses do not fear what Trump is going to do to them. Now, they are a little bit worried about the trade deals because that could hurt a lot of businesses. But for the most part, Trump is a pro-business president. And they don't, when Democrats get into office, they are pro-government. They are pro-big government. They believe businesses, especially big businesses, do too much bad things and that they need to be regulated more. They need to be forced to have higher wages and all this stuff. And that hurts business. So if that happens, though, and it's not guaranteed that we're going to get 5.4%, but that would be something. The Democrats wouldn't know what to do. All right. I appreciate you listening to the show today. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Beyond Reason R. Like the Facebook page, Beyond Reason Radio. Listen to the podcast anywhere the podcasts are available. And, I'm going to go home and do some yoga. Oh, no. I'm going straight to hell. I'll catch you guys next time.